And we are back with another episode of the Grunge Bible Podcast. My name is Ethan Shalloway. I am joined with Chris Salona, and this is episode 160. It's pretty awesome.
The big 160.
We are recording this on Wednesday. What is this, April
10th.
April 10th, not that it matters.
28th anniversary of Alice in Chains recording their Unplugged set.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it does matter.
That is kind of haunting, actually, to think about. Chris, we always start the episode the same way, so before we talk about everything we need to talk about, I just want to ask, how are you doing? This is our check-in time. So how are you, Chris?
Yeah, it's been a long, strange trip, I'd say, the last like 3-4 weeks of my life. But I was away. I was in Canada for a couple of weeks, then I came back and had like a quasi-normal week of work. But then we were together this past weekend at your brother's bachelor party.
We were?
And needless to say, I emerged from that weekend sleep deprived, downtrodden, and sick. And today's really the first day that I'm starting to feel a little bit more like myself. So I'm happy about that. I got some really good sleep last night. Today's an off day from the gym. So I feel pretty good. What about you?
All things considered, you feel pretty good.
Yeah, and there's a lot to consider.
There's a lot to consider right now. I'm in a similar boat. I am, coming off the heels of traveling home, traveling back, and
you're right on the toes of more travel.
Well, yeah, this is I got a big month, a lot of travel. I'm heading out tomorrow to Tulsa, Oklahoma for first track meet of the year.
Are you competing at the university, like Tulsa University, or no? Right?
No, it's It's in Ramona, Oklahoma. So
is this the one where they do all like the discus meets and shit?
Yeah, this is.
Let them rip.
Storm Chasers USA right here.
Okay, yeah.
Everybody goes here. Everybody goes here and chases the wind, and which is perfect for discus. If you know anything about track and field, pretty much any wind for discus is going to help. Javelin, not so much. It's just
be tricky.
It could be a terrible place to throw. They've never no one's ever. They didn't have any javelin there last year that I know of, and I mean in the videos it's just a cornfield. So, a lot of uncertainty around this meet. It is my first meet of the year, right. Considering coming back from a little surgery in November. So it's just going to be a see where you're at type of thing, and I'm okay with that because the season is long and the journey is long. So no problem.
Absolutely.
But yes, I am feeling much better. I got back to some normal. I'm just really trying to focus on sleep, which is still hard, even though we're sleep deprived. But yes, I am. I'm in a good spot.
Good.
I am.
I'm glad to hear that. So this episode, we're recording it a few days in advance. This one comes out on Monday, April 15th, tax day in the United States. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, it's too late. The IRS is going to be knocking on your door. Ethan, are your taxes done?
No, Chris, they're not done.
You got a few days left to get that squared away.
Yes, I don't. Tax day is like. It's something we don't talk about in this house.
Excuse me for mentioning it. Well, at least our episode is not going to be about that. Our episode is going to mirror the format of last week's episode where we talked about Kurt Cobain through a lot of his words and quotes. And we're going to do that this week with Layne Staley because this is the week, the anniversary that the world learned that Layne Staley had passed away in 2002. He was discovered on April 19th, and then in the ensuing days, the news broke and people began to learn that Layne had passed away. So we're going to spend this week's episode discussing Layne and the impact that he had and still has on us through his words and the things that he struggled with and just the memories that we have of him.
Yes, it is a heavy 2 weeks of podcast here.
Yeah.
Two of the big stars of the music scene that we love, and but it needs to happen, and we need to talk about them. And there's a lot of interesting quotes from obviously Kurt, and then a lot from Layne as well, because they're more defined by more than just their addiction and their struggles. As everybody knows this, I mean, everybody loves them because of what they've given us. So we're going to celebrate that today in the midst of a sad story, of course.
Absolutely.
So before we get to that, I just want to shout out all of our support. And if you don't know what I'm talking about the Patreon, the league of Patreon supporters. I seem to always mess that. The patrons that we have out there.
You're
and
perfect.
we have 3 levels, $2, $5, and $10, and that's pretty much where all of our support comes from and keeps us running. I mean, of course, everybody that gives us good words and listens, but there is a handful of people that give financially each month.
Give us your money.
So thank you to all of our levels. Most importantly, our top level. We're very thankful to have you, and we need some more people there. So please consider following the episode, going into the show notes, checking out a couple of those tiers, and maybe it's time that you get on board and you can help the cause.
Absolutely. Maybe we should institute moving forward like a patron of the week program where one lucky winner gets a short blurb right here. That might be kind of fun.
A little bio.
Yeah, maybe. Or just if there's one thing they want to tell the world, we'll share that on their behalf. But yeah, Ethan, well said. Join the Patreon, support this show. Keep us going, because it's been a long road so far, and 160 is a lot of episodes to
160, Chris. A long episode. a lot of episodes.
It's a lot of stuff. Well, we've got the 160th to get started with here now. So as we do, we are going to begin with this day in music history. And today is the 15th, and we're starting off strong with a birthday here, going all the way back to 1452. On this day in 1452, Leonardo da Vinci was born. And Ethan, if you're not aware of this, Da Vinci means from Vinci.
What is Vinci? A place?
Who the hell knows?
That's awesome. I can't believe that he's almost 600 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I actually had
great.
I had no idea that his birthday was so long ago.
Well, it's been a long time coming for Leonardo da Vinci. I'm holding up his photograph. It's the default picture that shows up when you look him up on the internet.
Is that just an oil painting of what he probably looked like?
Yeah, I mean, there's no photographs of this guy. I mean, they could have gotten it incredibly wrong, right?
Who painted Da Vinci, you know?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, he was from the Tuscan hill town of Vinci, so that wasn't a lie.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That reminds me, and I think, I don't know, maybe we talked about this weekend, a lot was talked about, but speaking of last names, the Nordic countries, and my one teammate is from Iceland, and did we talk about this?
No.
It doesn't sound like it.
It doesn't sound like it.
So my teammate's name is Sindri Gudmundsson, and in Iceland, for the last name, you take your father's first name and add son to the end of it. So his dad's name was Gudmunds, and so they just added son, so it's Gudmunds' son. And then like his son will be Sindri's son. And I kind of like how they honor the name, but they change the last name every year versus the, lineage effect of everybody else where you just
It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of Ericssons, Andersons, Petersons, Johanssons, so on and so forth. So it makes a lot of sense.
My son's name would be something Ethan's son, which is kind of cool.
Chris's son. That would be awful. More birthdays here. Happy birthday, Leonardo da Vinci, by the way, if you're listening out there somewhere. 1894, April 15th, Bessie Smith, the legendary singer, was born. 1978, Ethan Shalloway's favorite country musician was born, Chris Stapleton, April 15th, 1978. And on April 15th, 1980, the drummer for the Black Keys, Patrick Carney, was born, celebrating his 42nd birthday today. And then we have one event on this day in 2001 that we would like to highlight. Joey Ramone of the Ramones passed away on this day in 2001 at the age of 49. So that's everything you need to know for this day, April 15th.
Talk about a fast track to get through. I love it.
Yeah.
I was expecting to throw it back to me, but I love.
Unless you have any comments on
No,
Chris
I don't.
Stapleton or Patrick Carney or Bessie Smith or Joey Ramone.
Chris Stapler, Eric Church, baby.
The same person.
Same person.
Absolutely.
No, that's perfect. I mean, yeah, nothing else to say. I mean, the main thing that happened this day in music, or in this time in music, is what we're spending the bulk of the episode on, and that's Layne Staley. Like I said, body was found April 19th in 2002, died at the age of 34, and which is 7 years older than Kurt passed away. So a little bit older, but still young in the minds of many. Neither of us are obviously in our 30s yet, so
not yet.
But it's not far away, and it's interesting to think about. Losing a friend or a life so early in life, because 34 is not old, and but he lived a long life in those 34 years. There's a lot going on during that time, a lot of music, a lot of struggle, a lot of happiness, and yeah.
It's so complex, and I think Layne's story is always particularly sad for me. Just knowing, the timeline of the way that things went on, obviously struggling with addiction for most, if not all, of his adult life. And, by the time 1996 came around and, the Tripod album had come out, they had done Unplugged, and they played some shows in 96. But like after 1996, that was the last time that Layne Staley took the stage publicly. There were a couple of songs that he contributed to for Chains, I think in 98, and sporadically would do things like call into radio shows and whatnot. There was one time where they were interviewing the other three members of the band, and Layne called in unexpectedly. But aside from that, I mean, you have a complete retreat from the public eye. And it's really interesting. And it's really sad, as it relates to the other guys in the band, from 1996 until, his death in '02, it seemed like every single time there was an interview or, questions asked of the other three guys in the band, it was always, how's Layne doing? And, there's that clip where somebody asks Jerry how Layne is. He's like, I feel like every time you guys expect some sort of status report or something. And I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure he's doing all right. But, knowing their bandmate, knowing their best friend, I mean, he was struggling for pretty much the entirety of Alice in Chains' time in the public eye. And, this is one that it's just, there was so much momentum, unfortunately, seemingly going towards the results and what ended Layne's life. And, when it happened, it just made it, all the more sad that it had happened the way that it did.
Yeah. And if we were to compare to Kurt's life and struggles, Kurt struggled for 7 years, and that's a long time to deal with this. And Layne had this, but Kurt was in the middle of all of his fame, and Layne's struggle started while they were touring, but then he went away from the world, and there's a lot of a lot of talk from the band and everything, and how distant he was, and that's what's really sad to me, is like he kind of he was away, and that makes struggle so much harder. And I can't imagine, the difficulty for everybody involved, because, like you said, it was not. I mean, it was drawn out in sorts, and everything was. The writing was on the walls in a very sad way.
Yeah, it really was, and I think with them, for better or for worse, and I think it's for worse, so much of Alice in Chains and Layne Staley's legacy seems to be inextricably tied to addiction and writing about it and
Right.
discussing it. And I think, Layne wrote about it in such a way that was, I think, illuminating and really gave a very pure example of like what could happen with it, because I think for the longest time, and even still today, there's so many people, whenever anybody struggles with addiction, and the opioid crisis in the world, particularly in the Western world, in the States, is completely off the rails, and people are dying, by the hundreds, by the thousands all the time. It's easy for people, and it's very ignorant of them to do so, to just write off anyone who struggles with addiction as like a junkie, and they're just low lives and they're weak and whatnot. And Layne wrote about it so honestly, and he bared his soul and the worst parts of himself to us through his music. And there's one quote from the 1996 Rolling Stone article that they did that had Layne on the cover with the Neil Young lyric "Needle in the Damage Done" on it. And he said, I wrote about drugs, and I didn't think I was being unsafe or careless by writing about them. Here's how my thinking pattern went. When I tried drugs, they were fucking great, and they worked for me for years, and now they're turning against me, and now I'm walking through hell, and it sucks. I didn't want my fans to think that heroin was cool. But then I've had fans come up to me and give me the thumbs up, telling me that they're high. That's exactly what I didn't want to happen. I mean, that's in 1996. I mean, he passed away in 2002, 6 years later. And it's just, exactly like what he said, they turned against him, and the struggle is just so great. I mean, he wrote about it all throughout his career. I mean, going back to Dirt, and certainly through Jar of Flies and the Tripod album. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, take a song like Junkhead, where it's, where he's saying that you can't understand a user's mind, but try with your books and degrees. It's just like a perfect example of, I think, society's failure to understand what's going on in a situation like that.
Yeah, this is a pretty intense quote, and it is, and like it's crazy that it came out in '96 before like his struggles. I mean, he was struggling then, but like it, obviously it continued and got worse and got even darker for him, and then music probably helped and kept him alive, able to write about it, able to have the band close by, and and I look at that quote, and I wrote a little bit out underneath it, and it's such a, it holds a lot of wisdom in there that can get lost when you know the end result. And I just want to say, like, if you were to replace that with, say, alcohol abuse and alcohol use, because that is something that is put up on the walls and the posters, and people talk about it and advertise to us because it's legal, and especially like in university in the young 20s. I mean, that's where like addiction or that's where alcohol abuse and is like introduced.
That's where it begins.
And yeah, and it is harmless. I mean, it is harmless at the start, and it's fun at the start. And I have someone close to me that, like, I remember we were talking, and I was in my mid 20s, and we were working, and I was, maybe say telling him stories and stuff. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly how I started. Like, those are the exact stories that I tell, and, used to reminisce on, and like now I'm in my 40s, and it's caught up, and it's no longer fun. And it's something that, like Layne says, like, it sucks, and it's turning against me. And your body, like these addictions, chemical addictions, and that's alcohol and any other, and drugs and stuff. I mean, it changes the way your body operates, and you need it. And don't think that you are an outlier to the rule. Like, when you dabble in stuff, because we're all curious to the sides of life. Some people more than others. Some people are risk takers, and you would never think that it would go so far. But I think that in my last 5 years or so, like, I've been more cautious, because, like I said, that conversation I had where I was talking to my boss, and he's like, you sound a lot like me. Like, if you were to take a test, like, it would come back that you have alcoholic tendencies / are an alcoholic. And I was like, no, there's no way. Like, that's not me. There's no way. But it's like, the facts are the facts. Like, if you have those tendencies, like, you have them. And if you're not careful, stuff creeps up on you, and all of a sudden you're lost in the sauce. And I think that when, Layne is like, he's giving warning to so many people out there. He's like, I've lived it. It was fun until it wasn't fun. And then you're trapped. And when people come up and think that's what I was talking about, like the fun side of it, well, I'm here to tell you that it can get way worse and get very suffocating. So just take caution moving forward, and know that, like, it's a cycle that you do not want to be stuck in and get too far down the road, because then there's nothing you can do. And like, alcohol is like I said, drugs kill people faster. There's more overdoses and stuff, and you can have a night drinking where it ends wrongly, whether behind a car or something, whatever happens. But the lingering effects of alcohol are just as bad as anything in this world. I mean, it deteriorates your body from the inside out. So, yeah. And like I said, I mean, we just had a weekend. Of course, people drink. I mean, it's a part of it. But It is scary to think about. It is really scary because there's so many things that can take a stranglehold on your life. So I think that that's a dark quote, but there's also like a lot of like we need to see it as like a warning sign in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Layne's story, it really humanized that struggle with vices for me. You know, getting into his music when I was a teenager, maybe end of high school, beginning of college. I hadn't really been socialized, to many people who had openly struggled with things, right? Or who had bad experiences with these things, because a lot of times people hide it, right? And with Layne just kind of bearing that all out, it really kind of put a face to it, in a sense of like seeing what could happen. But I think something that Layne also, just as much as he did that for me, he reminded me and continues to remind me, and I think one of my favorite lessons from Layne, that people are not the bad things that they struggle with, right? People aren't the worst aspects about them. I mean, there's good and bad in everybody. And in that same interview, he said that people have a right to ask questions and dig deep when you're hurting people and things around you. But when I haven't talked to anybody in years and every article I see is dope this, junkie that, whiskey this, that ain't my title. Like, hi, I'm Layne, nail biter, My bad habits aren't my title. My strengths and my talent are my title. And I think that's a really, really great lesson and something that we can always be reminded of, because, if you've got people that are struggling with something, you have to give light to the things that they do well as well, and the things that they're good at and the things that they're successful with. I think it's just all an aspect of kind of giving people strength and shining positive light on people who need it, that are struggling with some very negative things. And I think Layne's story, like I said, kind of shows me that, there is good and bad, and you can't fixate on the bad just because it exists. And, there's aspects of these people that to be celebrated. And I mean, Layne certainly had a lot and continues to have a lot that ought to be celebrated, by his fans and by those who knew him and worked with him.
Yeah, the essence of that quote, I agree. You need to highlight the good, because that's how you help people that are struggling, is you remind them of what we love about them. The difficult part is, it's just like if you have a scratch on your car or a big dent, it's like the only thing you can see when you walk into the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just glaring. And so, and that's human nature too. Like when somebody wrongs you, whether they lie, like, and all that trust that you had in them is now boiled down to the one time that they did you wrong. And it's really hard to get past that. And that is like human nature and very difficult. And that's where like a lot of compassion needs to come in. And it's extremely difficult to do that. But it is, Layne was right. I mean, my bad habits are not my title. And yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things you just got to try every day to continue to remind yourself that when talking with people and knowing that, like, because in reality, everybody struggles with addiction, certain, different forms of it, but no one's perfect. And that's not reality to try to be perfect.
Yeah. And it's just like the power that, can be given if you believe in somebody and you recognize the good things. And I think the power that you can give yourself if you recognize those things. I mean, Layne also said, whatever dramas are going on in my life, I always find that place inside my head where I see myself as the cleanest, tallest, strongest, wisest person that I can be. And, when you're dealing with your own stuff, I think that can also be lost too. And that's another reason why I love that quote. And I think with Layne, I mean, there's a lot of artists from this era have that duality about them of, the dark and the light and the good and bad, and, oftentimes being so present and being at odds with one another. And Layne is no different. Such delicate beauty at times with his voice. And then at other times he used his voice to just completely bring the house down, right? And it's the same thing, it appears to be, with who he was, struggling with these different things. And also, you read books and you read and you listen to people who knew him, and they just talk about him being the sweetest guy in the world, and, the funniest, and having like one of the best laughs you ever heard that would get everybody laughing, and at the same time you read, instances where he was really struggling and took things too far and wasn't very kind and made bad choices. I mean, those aspects are present all of the time. And in a similar way to Kurt, I can't imagine that, this success, made those situations any easier, right? I mean, when you have that ability to, you are successful and you're traveling and you have the world at your fingertips. I mean, there's different ways that you can employ that, and there's different things that you're going to deal with. And I don't think anybody is prepared to deal with those things or to make the best decisions possible when they're in that spot.
Mm-hmm. Looking at these quotes, it's, this episode is to talk about, I mean, Layne had a voice and was very thoughtful and playful a lot of times. And, looking at these quotes that we wrote down, they're very different than the ones we wrote down from Kurt. I mean, Kurt, you could tell he was struggling from fame and he turned to, drugs to kind of cope with that. And it was like a lot of the stuff that he seemed to talk about and write were, it was just a little bit different, a different frame. So, and there's tons of good interviews where you see Layne's playful side. So if this, seems a little bit darker, I mean, it's just, it was a different struggle that these two guys were dealing with. Same in a lot of ways, but also like very different. And I think that everybody's struggle is different, and you can't just put everybody in the same, you can't put everybody in the same box of like, they're just, these guys are quote unquote, addicts and junkies. I mean, these guys are, every story is different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Layne is the hallmark of that, in the sense that, in a similar way that you kind of group these people together or cast them off, people tend to, just because of the things that they're struggling with or the negative aspects. I think, all of these musicians that have struggled with substance abuse or anything, they all kind of get grouped together and treated the same by a lot of the holier than thou crowd. But, these people are certainly worth, it's one of those things. I think if you're gonna listen to the music, I think it's illuminating to, read into the person that's behind the music. And, you can learn as much, I think, from the person as you can through the art.
Moving on to two quotes. There's two quotes that he talks about the perceptions of the songs that they've written. And the first one, our perception of songs that we've written, the meaning changes from day to day to whatever stage we're at in life and careers. And then the next one is the songs are about things that we're thinking and we wrote them down. And when you listen to them, whatever you think it's about, that's what it's all about. And Chris and I, we've talked about this to each other a lot of times. And this is one of the main reasons we love music, is because someone may write a song that has a meaning to them, and then we listen to it, and through our experiences in our life, we apply different meaning to it. Both are correct. Both are, and Layne is giving that authority to us to like take it and run. And we heard Frusciante talked about this a lot in his interview. I mean, these songs do not, these songs and words in Frusciante do not belong to them. Like, they are just expressing themselves, and you can go in. And that's one of the things that we love about music. And I think, Layne was awesome, great ambassador for, is like, this is, if this helps you in some way, or if this is good for you, like, then that's why we wrote it. And I love that. I love thinking about it like that and moving through music that same way. And you can apply meaning to songs like that have, no meaning in a way. Like,
right.
There's a song that we played there's a minute and a half like mix that we played this weekend on repeat. And it has a very special meaning for the rest of my life, no doubt.
Absolutely. And I remember when you and I both discovered the second quote that Layne said, where he's like, whatever you think it's about, that's what it's about. It was the 2002 Much Music TV special that George Stroumboulopoulos hosted for Much Music after Layne had passed away. And I remember like we were watching that, as we did at the time when we were at the University of Pittsburgh together. Like, we were just like sitting on the porch or like in the living room, like throwing on random YouTube videos. And that one, I remember like Layne said that quote in an interview that they had cut for this special they were doing after he had passed. I remember we looked at one another and we're like, this is the one. And I think this quote has kind of informed my fandom of music more than more than maybe anything else, because at that point I think I was 17 or 8, I was 18. I wasn't really a huge music fan, and you can oftentimes fall into the holes of having people dictate to you what's important or what has value to you, or songwriters can do that too, if they're like, hey, this is what this is about, and like this is what it's for. But I mean, Layne was completely right, and that's something that I've carried forward with me, and I talk about all the time on the page when I post that, like, it doesn't matter what box you try to put this into. It doesn't matter what it's called. It doesn't matter what the inspiration was for writing this. Like, if you connect to it in a specific way, then it's yours and it matters. And like, that connection is valuable and it's important. And just, to hear such an incredible musician like Layne Staley support that and be an advocate of that was really empowering as a young music fan. And kind of gave me the confidence to, apply these songs to my own life. And that's something that, I still do all this time. I like learning about the background of songs. I really enjoy doing that. But, if I have a different interpretation of the song and then I learn that it was written about something completely else, it's not going to stop me from connecting in it in the way that I feel, most genuinely. And I think that's a really special gift to give somebody, to give them the confidence to, make their own relationship with the art.
Yeah, another quote by Layne, he says, "We write about ourselves because we know about ourselves." And just piggybacking, continuing, when we listen to songs, we listen to it in the lens of our lives. And that's selfish, however you want to say it, but it is what it is. Like, you see through the prism of your life, and that, I guess it's not really selfish, but like, that's how you view art. So it's not surprising when we do this, and I think that's what Layne understands that, and he was right, and I agree. I think that has informed a lot of my musical taste and how I process music, and that just makes sense. I think it makes sense to everybody. I mean, and it's when you have dialogue about music and somebody brings up a viewpoint that you've never heard and stuff, I'm always very appreciative, and like, I'm not gonna, it's not something that you can really argue because, there's no book behind it. I mean, they can tell you what it's about, but it's just like, synonyms and words that mean other things. I mean, a lot of things have double meanings, so why not?
Yeah, exactly. And probably this brings up a really good point. Much to the chagrin of many people who know me, I have this habit of, if I share a song with somebody, or if there's a song that I want people to listen to, oftentimes I'll share it, and then I will immediately launch into this story about the experience that I had with this song that makes it special. And I don't know if my friends appreciate that or not, or like it or not, but for me as a music fan, like, I love it when people share a song with me and they talk about why it's special to them. Like, oh, like, there was this one night, we were riding with the windows down, and like, we took this corner and it was beautiful and this song was on, or something to that effect. Like, I mean, that's what makes these songs special. And all of these guys, Layne especially, I mean, he performed and he wrote music in such a way that, that door is open for the listener, and it's always open, and you can take it anywhere you want. And once again, you're right. I love that point that you made, where it's like, they wrote about themselves because they knew themselves, and we apply it to our own lives in our specific way because that's who we know best. And that's, like I said, what a great gift to give. And that's the cool thing about music, because I mean, Layne's been off this earth for 22 years, and there's going to be people this afternoon that hear an Alice in Chains song or a Mad Season song with Layne on it for the first time, and it's going to blow them away, and it's going to be put up in their mantle inside their heads of music that matters, that's always going to matter because of something that happened in their lives. And that's, I mean, you can't have a more enduring legacy than that.
Mm-hmm. Thinking, another small quote that, some of these, the words from Layne, we've definitely thrown back and forth a lot, maybe more than any of the other people that, I mean, maybe not better. There's a lot of stuff that we've talked about between the two of us from him. But one that we love is this: I guess I can go anywhere I want if only I knew where to go. And this small sentence, has taken us. We have taken it and went places with it. You know what I mean? I mean, it was when we were transferring, when we're trying to figure out careers, like we've applied it to so many different things of like, I guess I can go anywhere I want if only I knew where to go. And sometimes when I listen to music, I think the same thing. Like, how do I want to take this song in? Like, where do I want to go? Do I want to go to the sad space? Like, no, not this time. Like, do I want to go to whatever inspiring? And this one is so good because it's so true in life. I mean, you really can do anything, you can go anywhere you want. I think about it a lot. Like if you have 5 years to do something, because we've been doing, say, the podcast for 3 years, or there's that quote like, if you to try something, give it 5 years before you make a decision if it's good or not. You can do anything you want, and if you see it through, like it's going to take you places you never thought you could go. And that quote is exactly it. Like if I knew where to go, maybe it'd be easier. But really, like the first part is important. Like, I guess I can go anywhere I want.
Yeah, and being open to the uncertainty and the possibility. And for me, this quote is kind of a companion to River of Deceit, and kind of the theme I find in that song of the battle between solitude and isolation and uncertainty, depending on the day and depending on your frame of mind, can be terrifying and scary and awful, or it can be the most enlightening, refreshing, and exciting thing in your life. And this quote's the same way. I mean, if you're on a good day, if you heard that I can go anywhere I want if only I knew where to go, you sit back and think like, shit, like, let's go everywhere. Like, this is going to be great. And then if you wake up on a day and you're not feeling too hot, it can be like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Right. And it just kind of speaks to that, everything's happening all the time simultaneously within ourselves, within the good and the bad, and, with the possibilities too. And I think that rings true all throughout Layne's musical catalog and all throughout the words that he said. And I think all throughout the legacy that he's left for everybody to learn from and to enjoy.
Yeah. And, just thinking about the way that the band talks about him and everybody that interacted with him, I don't want that to get lost, because everybody that had those interactions with him, talked about how playful, how funny, how genuine, how down to earth he was. And I think that is important to note, because it's easy to look back and just like use his addiction and his struggles to define him.
Yeah.
But really, like, the people that knew him outside of himself, as we talked about, like, they were like, no, he was a joy to be around. And that is a wonderful thing to hear, because you can hear also from a lot of people that were in stardom that, no, these guys are dicks. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people that's like, no, you don't want to meet this person. Like, he is going to act like he's better than you. And I really don't think that was ever the case with Layne. And it's, not to be surprised, because Jerry was one of his better friends. So I know Jerry, there's no way Jerry is a dick either.
Exactly. And to kind of point to that, I do want to share a little bit of the statement that the band put out that you attached at the end of our notes here, that the Alice in Chains had released when Layne Staley passed away. And they said that we are looking for all the usual things: comfort, purpose, answers, something to hold on to, a way to let him go in peace. Mostly, we are feeling heartbroken over the death of our beautiful friend. He was a sweet man with a keen sense of humor and a deep sense of humanity. He was an amazing musician, an inspiration, and a comfort to so many. He made great music and gifted it to the world. We are proud to have known him, to be his friend, and to create music with him. For the past decade, Layne struggled greatly. We can only hope that he has at last found some peace. We love you, Layne, dearly, and we will miss you endlessly. I love the middle part of that, speaking to who he was as a person, before they got to who he was as a musician. And I think, those who knew him best, his bandmates, through that quote, they want to make sure that Layne is being remembered as Layne, the person, not Layne, the singer in Alice in Chains, or the famous person who struggled with drugs. And I think that's a good lesson, and that's something to carry forward. I think with the way that we think of people, they're people first, and their occupation much later down the line, and they're it's all about who they are as people.
Mm-hmm. And the beginning part I really enjoyed. It's like we're looking for the usual things: comfort, purpose, and answers. And I think I said this in the last episode about Kurt. Death is a part of life. Some
Mm-hmm.
go before others. And there was a quote on somebody else had passed away, and there's a quote on the Instagram that was like, rest in peace. I hope your family, make this death meaningful and purposeful, and to talk about and let the legacy live on, and talk about the good, and use it for tomorrow. And I think we do obviously an excellent job with the page to highlight the music, highlight the people. And, we take time once a year, twice a year when these anniversaries come up, because that's what you do. But, we're going to continue to share Layne, the musician, and the interactions he had with his band, and the words from his band about the time together. And that's inspirational for artists out there. We know very much, everybody talks about how much of a power Layne has been to their lives. So, I hope that Layne up there understands that, he really was a beautiful addition to this world, and had a great impact.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could not have said that better. So thank you for that. And thank you if you're listening. Today, I think during the month of April, and certainly around the time that, commemorates the anniversary of learning about his death, we play Layne's music loudly, and we talk about him and what he meant to all of us, as we did today. So if you've got any friends who are fans of the genre, have a similar conversation with them about your favorite songs or your favorite moments and whatnot. And I think that's just as important. So that's what I think we should be doing these days. And Ethan, I appreciate that we're able to do that today here. If you enjoyed this conversation, thanks for sticking around. If you send this to maybe one of your friends as well, and see if they like it too. But as we get ready to check out here on episode 160, we'll have a couple of songs of the week to share. Ethan, do you have a song of the week?
I have a song of the week. I have
Awesome.
something, I guess I'll get into it, something that hopefully we're going to romanticize for the rest of our lives. And so, this past weekend, I think I remember I was just listening to a mix and of some, I don't know if it was all instrumental, but it was kind of like this trance type of music, and music that just, it's all about flow and mood and whatnot. And anyway, we came upon this song, Neo Tango Circa Dos, Clip 1 Mix, and it's by Knock 9. And it's 1 minute and 29 seconds long, and it's like piano. It's literally a sample. Somebody sampled something, and but it's really groovy. It has this like dance to it, and you kind of like, you just get your body moving.
It's great.
And it's great. Yes, I'm glad that you think the same. And so there was 15 guys there this weekend, and we started playing it, and it caught on. And I think I started playing it, and then I played it again. It just kind of kept coming up, and people were like, I like this song. What is this? And I was like, and all of a sudden I put it on repeat when we were playing some poker, and then it really started getting ingrained. And then the lore, it just started unfolding in front of our eyes, and we kept putting it on. Like, how long can we listen to this song? And it just kept going. And then we were in like the stage of the weekend. It was like hysteria, and the song would keep coming on, and people hated it, but then they were like, wait, I think I like it. And then all of a sudden, like, it was unescapable, and it was like time, how bachelor parties are, like time stands still. Like, it's not real life. Like, you step away from the world, and that's exactly what it was. And it was, we were just caught in this, like, it was like a Land Before Time or The Never Ending Story, like we were just out there, and this song was the soundtrack stuck in our heads and just echoing through our brains. And I'll forever remember it. No doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. So like with certain things that go on in my life, like my job and like lifting and just like trying to like be a good person, like I like to think of myself as a pretty hard worker, but any of the work that I do in those areas pales in comparison to how hard I work and how directly I apply myself when it's time to build lore and lore in a group setting. And this was one of those classic moments. Like, Ethan, we've built a lot of lore in our day, and I think this one we kind of smelled the blood in the water. And you start playing it a couple of times, like this one's going to be significant. So you just hammer this song, and then you've built up some very sturdy and prolific lore amongst this group.
Yes. And I think it was, like I said, there was 15 people there. So like, it just felt like we were casting a wide net. Like, this is going to, like, it's going to come back at times that you just never know, because there's so many people that, like, it could pop up, and all of a sudden, like, group chat's fired up, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not be romantic about that?
Exactly. Absolutely. Yes. There was a lot of lore, and, like, you know, I know that maybe it was a little bit, let's see, how do I say it? It was a more unexpected weekend for a lot of us, I think. I think we knew what to expect, but we didn't know exactly how far it would go.
Right.
But luckily, like, coming out of it, I think that there's enough lore to validate, like, what happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
That's the only way I could put it.
Yeah, it was perfect. And that's a very worthy addition to our Songs of the Week playlist.
Because I was thinking about it, like, you know, when you have plans, like, sometimes, you know, things don't go down as you plan, you know, and you have to roll with the punches. And sometimes, you know, the hangs are not perfect in a way, or the way that you foresaw it. But, you know, you just got to roll with it.
Because that really didn't go, like, on anything of what the plan that I thought it would go.
Right.
That wasn't English, but you know what I'm saying.
I 100% know what you were saying. I saw it in a few people, and like, but I think, like, you know, it's going to be important moving forward, and that's all.
Those settings are always funny, where there's, like, pods of people. I mean, we had 15, and, like, there were, like, little groups of, like, these, like, this trio, like, all knew one another, and, like, there'd be, like, crossover, like a Venn diagram, where it's like one person from that group of three knows these other four, and so on and so forth. And it's always just an interesting mixture of people, because there's always one common thread at a bachelor party, and it's the bachelor. So that was any indication. It was going to be good.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody knows that one person has that commonality, and I think what made it difficult, or it's like when you have a group like that, and it was loose planning, but it's really hard to mobilize and to get everybody on the same page. And we kept trying.
16's a lot of people to wrangle.
And it was like, it was just a funnel of stuff we could do, and it came down to, there was one thing that we could do, and so that's what we did all weekend. You know,
hang at the house and play games, play poker, and just do all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, you know what we're talking about. You know what time it is.
You know what time it is.
All right, your turn, awesome. Chris.
So my song of the week is not going to nearly be as whimsical or as lore building. It's going to be relevant to the episode, the main subject of this week's episode. But my song of the week is going to be, I guess, in terms of playlist building, it's got to be "Bee Girl" by Pearl Jam from Lost Dogs. Now, the Lost Dogs track of "Bee Girl" has "Bee Girl" at the beginning, and there's like 6 minutes of dead space. And then my song of the week is a hidden track at the end of that 6 minutes of dead space, and it's called 42002. And that's an Eddie Vedder composition, pretty much just him and the guitar. And talking about April 20th, 2002, when he found out that Layne Staley had passed away. And I try to share it every year on the 20th of April on the page. And it's really, it's so fucking sad. And it's just, I think it's such an accurate representation of, I think, the emotions that existed at the time, when people found out that Layne Staley passed away. Just to cherry pick a couple of some lyrics, so sad to think of him all alone. Lonesome friend we all knew. Always hoped you'd pull through. You can't grow old using. And then the end, it says, so sing just like him, fuckers. It won't offend him. Just me, because he's dead. And you can tell that this Layne's death, I think, affected everybody. I mean, he casted a wide net with the influence and the inspiration that he provided for people. And, when he passed away, that the net of grief, I think, was just as wide, and this song is an example of it. So every year, around this time of the year, I take some time to listen to it and just kind of reflect a little bit on Layne. So I would add this one to the Songs of the Week playlist. So maybe you could do that as well, perhaps. So "Bee Girl" from Lost Dogs because of 42002.
Yeah, that's a great addition. Very, very appropriate. So
Absolutely. So I think it's just about time for us. I've got somewhere I have to be in 16 minutes. So we did it again, Ethan. I know I'll talk to you, but on the record, good luck on the season opener this weekend. It's going to be great. I look forward to hearing the reports from Oklahoma.
absolutely. And everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. Made it to the end of the podcast. We will be back next week, probably a little bit more upbeat in a lot of ways. So
Maybe.
we will see. Yeah, maybe. We will see you then. And until then, rock and roll. Stay heavy, my friends.
Rock and roll. See y'all later.